Welcome to the MortgageWISE radio show and video podcast,
Ooh-ah.
where we educate and provide expert advice on personal finance, mortgages, and real estate investing.
Show me the money.
As a result of what we do, our team has helped hundreds of first-time buyers, experienced buyers, and real estate investors achieve their goals of homeownership.
I wonder if there's a connection there.
Here are your executive producers and mortgage advisors, Randy and Veronica Chambliss.
What up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the MortgageWISE radio show. I am your co-host, Mr. Randy Chambliss. I am the Executive Director of Louisiana Housing Authority and also a corporate branch manager with Geneva Financial, which is a national mortgage bank. And I have to my right,
I am Veronica Chambliss. I am also a co-branch manager with Geneva Financial, and I'm also the housing director with Louisiana Housing Authority. So welcome to episode 24.
24.
Everyone.
Whoa.
24. Oh, that's cool.
Yes.
24. All right. So in this episode, we're going to discuss how to increase urban communities' homeownership rate and financial IQ with Mr. Oliver O.T. Thomas Jr. So Mr. Thomas is the host of the Good Morning Show at WBOK 12:30 a.m., a motivational speaker, the former city councilman for New Orleans, co-writer and producer of the hit play Reflections. And Mr. Thomas played himself in multiple episodes in season 2 of HBO's hit show Treme. Mr. Thomas served on the New Orleans City Council from 1994 to 2007. He was first elected to City Council in 1994, representing District B, a district that includes the neighborhood of Central City, as well as the Central Business District and parts of Mid-City and Uptown. He served as councilman for this district for 2 terms before being elected at an at-large seat in 2002, so 2002. As the host of the Good Morning Show at WBOK 12:30 a.m., Mr. Oliver O.T. Thomas provides uncompromised commentary on politics, economics, business, health, just life in general. Mr. Thomas' extreme intelligence allows him to break down complex, multi-layered issues into easy to understanding nuggets that listeners can use to make decisions. Mr. Thomas has agreed to share his story and expert advice on how to increase urban communities' homeownership rate and financial IQ.
Awesome.
Welcome, Mr. Thomas.
Welcome to the MortgageWISE radio show, sir.
Man, I am first name X, last name Cited. X, excited to be here with the Chamblisses. I think this movement with MortgageWISE and the work that you guys are doing, one of the solutions to financial legacy is generational and wealth building in our community, man. It is probably, it has been, especially in terms of American capitalism, it's been the first step where we've missed the step in the last couple of generations.
Absolutely. First, I just want to say, we appreciate everything you do in our community. And I was blessed and honored to come on your radio show at WBOK multiple times. And it's a good feeling knowing that you were able to come on our platform and share some of that wisdom. But, we got a lot to cover today. But before we do so, if you don't mind, if you could tell us a little bit about your journey, right? We talked about your highlights, but we also know that everybody have that story of how they have to go through those challenges to get to the place. So you can unpack as much or as little of your story you like, but tell us a little bit about Mr. Thomas.
Well, first of all, again, it's an honor. Thank you, Veronica and Randy. Man, first of all, if you don't have a story, or if you don't have some ups and downs and challenges, you're probably not prepared, especially for the long haul, for life. Everybody who said life is easy, I don't know what world they were talking about. It doesn't mean life has to be difficult all the time, but life is extremely challenging. As a little boy, I grew up in the Lower Ninth Ward. That was a challenge to exist in that neighborhood. Not knowing we were poor, not even understanding the fact that we didn't live on St. Charles Avenue because we thought the needs that we had in that community were met. And early on, you didn't really think about wants, because survival was first and foremost. Of course, going to McCarty and Lawless and Joseph S. Clark, getting an athletic scholarship to get out of my neighborhood. Man, I couldn't wait to get out the Lower Nine. I couldn't wait to get out of a city that was culturally rich. But I didn't think it offered opportunities for young Black men and women who really wanted to be something or be their best selves. Because a lot of my friends who excelled, even if they had disciplines like law and engineering, they worked in fast food, they worked at hotels. The capitalistic the economic environment here didn't lend itself to internships and apprenticeships for us. So when they came down and offered me a scholarship to go away to college, man, I was like, hey, I picked the furthest one.
Right.
Just to kind of get away to see something different. And of course, did that, played ball, graduated, finished from the College of Santa Fe. I also finished the executive program at the Kennedy School at Harvard University. I completed the Aspen Institute on foreign policy and policy and how do you affect policy. The same place where Colin Powell and many others went. Graduate of Loyola's Institute. Was the first speaker for the New Orleans Regional Institute in their first class. And I was selected by my classmates to be their presenter for the graduation of their class here in New Orleans. I was elected to the city council in 1994. And 3 elections after that, I think it was maybe the only person in the city got reelected with 90, 80, and 78%. So it was a blessing and humbled by the people here. And of course, it's well documented. Made a mistake in my life. Served my time, went to learn more about myself and what was it about me that could be better and how can I better serve my community. Came back home and found my way from catching a bus to working on a job making $7.25 an hour to continuing to mentor, consult with community groups. I do a lot of messaging. I consult with a lot of very important people on systems and how to make them work. They call me and kind of pick my brain. I studied those systems when I was elected. I studied those systems when I had time away to myself. Gerard Stevens gave me a chance to come on a radio show with him years ago when I didn't know what I was doing. And he said, man, come on a radio show and talk about what you know. Help people understand these systems. Help them understand the budget and legislation and municipal ordinances and how the state and the city function separately and ought to be the same. And I started doing that, man. And Paul Boyer asked me if I'd like to have my own show and gave me an opportunity now. And I've had the largest listening audience on WBOK, one of the fastest growing morning shows in the region, working with Equity Media and the staff there. But also in my other job, the one that takes care of me and my family, I work on hazard mitigation, marketing and developing infrastructure plans for systems and communities from Harris County to Jackson, Mississippi, the airport in Shreveport, and the California Canal project in Jefferson, and several infrastructure projects here, working with a great firm called Stewart Consulting. And then, of course, my acting. I'm the co-producer for New Orleans Night Watch on Thursday nights on A&E. Co-producer for Cold Cases, a series we're working with the city now to help examine cold cases and bring closure, where our production team will put up the resources, man, to find out who harmed individuals and families. And Mayor Latoya Cantrell and the Chief of Police embrace that to help use those outside resources to find out who killed, who shot, who hurt other people in cases that have not been solved. So then I write and do a lot of different, and I was former chairman of the city's housing committee when we worked with Mark Morial to have the greatest infill, not of low-income housing, but of affordable housing, right. Working with former Mayor Mark Morial and Vincent Sylvan, where during that time, our housing program was so effective in working with the ministers and ACT and community groups that it went over 41% for the first time in a long time. Because even though we think we may have our family have owned a home here, New Orleans, that flipped in New Orleans a long time ago. We've been a city of renters. And of course, you all know that the most stable economic and social environments are where people own their homes, not where they rent them. So that's a little bit about me here today, and just looking forward to this show.
Awesome, awesome. Hey, we appreciate you for unpacking your story, because a lot of people that watch our show, they get motivated by hearing other people's stories. And when you eloquently break that story down like you did, you brought it from a high point and you brought us to the low point, and then you brought us out of that and what you learned and how you're able to give back to the community. And so that brings me to the first, the discussion itself. And just a reminder for those who are just joining, the topic today, we here with Mr. Oliver O.T. Thomas, and the topic is how to increase urban communities' home ownership rate and financial IQ, right? And so here's a stat that I want to share with you. This is an article that I pulled. It comes from National Association of Realtors. It says, between 2016 and 2019, the percentage of non-Hispanic white Americans who own home has been consistently above 71%, according to a recent analysis by the National Association of Realtors, NAR. But during the same period, the home ownership for Black Americans has consistently stood just above 41%. However, among Hispanic Americans, home ownership rates have been constantly above 45%. And among Asian communities, Asian American, 53% of Asian Americans own home. And so, having said that, I remember when I was on your show and you brought that to my attention for the first time, that the Hispanics in our community actually blew past Black American home ownership. So let's talk a little bit about what are your insights, what are your thoughts, what happened there? How are we still last in home ownership?
Well, the Hispanic community surpassed the African American community for the first time in history over a year ago. That is an indicator of per capita wealth and generational wealth in terms of value and land value to own to that particular family of that generation. How did it happen? It happened because we began to focus on not generational wealth and owning our homes. We started to focus on possessions that did not mean or equal generational wealth, as well as the housing corporations that used to exist in our community, man. Lower Ninth Ward Housing Corporation, Desire Housing Corporation, Central City Housing Corporation. And what else happened? The disintegration of the African American family, where you sat around the table and talked about owning a home one day. Those things went in the wrong social direction. So where did the lectures, or where did the study, where does the interest in owning a home come from? I talked about this the other day with some folk. We have African American professionals, right, who do pretty good in terms of how much money they make, but they would rather live downtown in a 1 or 2 bedroom and pay exorbitant amount of money, or lease something for somebody, than own a property with your own land that you instantly add value to, that creates legacy, financial legacy building and generational wealth within your own family, where you could flip that or keep that and then go get the place that you want. So we bought into this thing, we bought away from our legacy of owning something, and we bought into. I wrote down a comment. I wrote down. I said, we went. Black folks started stunting instead of house hunting.
I like that. Repeat that again. We'll say it again.
We started stunting. Let me go tell them to turn this down. We started stunting instead of house hunting.
Okay.
Right. You know, and I love that we started stunting before we started house hunting. Wow.
Instead of house hunting.
Right, instead of house hunting. Wow. You know, guys, and that's extremely important that we have these conversations. And, you know, that's one of the reasons why Veronica and I are passionate about what we do, because at the end of the day, we have to have these conversations because they're not being taught.
Right. And then the other thing that happened is, just like neighborhood health clinics left, and we see the impacts of that with chronic illnesses, especially during COVID, man, those housing corporations that used to operate within our community, many of them don't exist anymore, from Lower Ninth to Central City. And then how much demand did we put on financial institutions, right, in terms of making sure that our communities weren't redlined? You know, right. That community reinvestment, right. That subsidies. The beautiful thing about what the Morial administration did in the 90s and early 2000s was they leveraged city funds with outside financial institutions to create subsidies, which would ultimately turn into grants to create home ownership. It was intentional.
Mhm.
When you don't have the culture, when you don't have the legacy, when you don't have the resources, this is where government and government leadership is most important, right there. So in our community, we lost all those things. And then lastly, the education that used to come out of the church and institutions that represented our community. It wasn't just about Jesus, it was about Jesus and have a place to stay.
Right.
Hungry, you fed me.
Yeah.
Thirsty, you gave me a drink. Stranger, you invited me in.
Mhm.
Into what? Into someplace I was staying.
Right.
So we got away from a lot of those principles or teaching that created home ownership. The Lower Ninth Ward is a great example, right? It wasn't the best community in the world, but it was sustainable because what? At one time, there were over 20,000 families who lived down there. 61% of them own their own homes.
Wow. Did not know that.
And this is why it's so important what you guys do, right? House hunting, stop stunting, okay? Because
Okay.
if we want to start building generational wealth again, now, okay, now I'm gonna lay this on you guys. For everybody who thinks they're doing well amongst millennials, this class of millennials is 32% poorer than the two generations before them.
Whoa.
So,
wow.
so the appearance of having cash and access and material things is actually greater than the reality of what you had.
Right.
Now, how can I say that? My parents, my mother who retired is one of the first African Americans working with South Central Bell. My dad who retired as a laborer. They left me and my sister, well, they left us multiple pieces of property paid for. With all of the education and all of the importance of me and my sibling, we don't own nothing outright.
Wow.
Wow.
Right.
Wow.
So for any millennial, anybody who thinks you making 100,000, 80, 90,000, you driving the car with the $900, $700 car note, not counting the insurance. If you're not owning property, you're not creating financial legacy and you're not building generational wealth.
Right.
Period. All you're doing is enjoying the moment.
That's
And
it.
I wrote something else here. Legacy building versus momentary living.
That's right.
Those are and that's why it's important to see a power couple like you guys saying, hey, hold on a second. You know, we can have a good time and have some nice things and also have some stuff for the kids.
Absolutely.
And also have some stuff for the culture.
That's right. You know, and the biggest thing for me, like when I hear the word wealth is not associated with money for me. It's associated with time, right? You know, how much time do you have that you can go without actually working for somebody else? You know, so you have a $100,000 sitting in your bank account and your living expenses is $50,000 a year, then your wealth is 2 years. Right. But if you create some type of business that's a sustainable business and it's cash flowing month after month, then your wealth could be infinite. You know, I remember listening to Dr. Claude Anderson state, he was like, man, it's criminal to send your kids off to college. Instead of them having to come back to build and grow your businesses in your community, you send them off to the other communities. He said that should be a crime. And I look at the fact that we don't have communities like we used to. We have neighborhoods. And then sometimes, some places in our neighborhood, the neighbors moved out and they just left us with the hood. But communities is when you're able to walk out your house, you have the local grocery store, the local corner store that was Black owned, you have the gas station, you have the clothing store, everything that you need to function and survive as a human, you have that in your community. And so when we look at what's going on, we know that crime is a big factor dealing with finances. And so when we look at our crime that we have, we know we're resilient. So people are worried about, one, how they can have a roof over their head. They're afraid the landlord might put them out. If the landlord put them out, I'm homeless. If I don't have food to eat, I can starve to death. So they don't have that hope. so to speak. They don't have that faith, so to speak. So they turn to what they think is necessary, which is crime. And we constantly going down that rabbit hole of crime in the community.
Very good analogy, Randy. When you look at homes throughout this country, whether they're in Appalachia, whether they're here or in poor urban communities, whatever the ethnic group is, if the data shows that there's a high concentration of home ownership, those communities are usually safer.
Mm.
Those communities are usually more upwardly mobile. Those communities usually produce people who are interested in education and social and academic advancement. That's a fact. So home ownership, man, home ownership accomplishes several things. It gives you a foundation for creating financial legacy. It gives you another foundation for generational wealth. And it gives you access to leverage to all ways have something of value.
That's right. That's right.
Always. That apartment downtown that you lease has no value.
Right. Exactly.
As nice as that car is, it depreciates. You're paying too much for it once you drove it off the lot.
Yeah.
That's right.
You can't trade it in for cash.
Nope.
As a matter of fact, if you go to trade it in on another model, they're going to ask you to put up some cash to go with it to get the next model.
That's right.
So the one thing you don't have to do that with is property.
That's right.
Land with a capital L.
That's right. You know, and when you own and you control the land and resources in your community, now you always have a safe haven. And I wrote down some bullet points. You know, homeowners also tend to buy more goods and use more services in their own community, i.e. creating more sustainable businesses, right? Research shows that many social benefits homeownership provides, including increased volunteering in the neighborhood, improved health, and also less crime, like we talked about. And financial education is key, right? Financial education, financial wellness, because this type of conversation, like you mentioned earlier, is just not being taught and not being had. But when we look at that financial statement, you have that balance sheet. It's very important for us to wrap our head around it. Yes, it's in accounting, but you can make accounting fun, right? It's just very, very simple. Assets put money into your income column, and liabilities take money out of your household. So we want to lessen the liabilities as much as we possibly can and buy more assets. And hopefully the assets that you buy is creating what? More income. So like you're doing, you're creating movies and documentaries. That's assets. That's an asset that's putting money into your income column. You have WBOK, that one of the fastest growing syndicated talk shows, putting money into your income column. And most people, they don't have that thought when they get ready to make a purchase and say, wait a minute, I'm getting ready to buy this car. Is this a liability that's going to take money out of my household? Or is this going to be an asset that's going to put money into my household, our household?
It's very difficult to limit liability when all of your decisions create liability.
That's right. Exactly.
So when you pay more for something that you want, but you don't need, when you live in a place and you pay a rent that doesn't help appreciate in terms of the value of your ownership, when you buy a car where the margin in terms of the note don't allow you to save to invest in your financial future, when you have two black Gucci handbags, when they're both black, you probably only need one.
Right.
And so when you buy a watch that has some social standing, but it's only because you probably should just need it to tell time.
Exactly. How to be at work on time.
On time. And look, I'm not saying that we shouldn't have the things that people want, but you learn to get the things that you want when you've built a foundation to keep and to supply the things that you need.
Sure.
Yes.
We have raced from wants way ahead of needs now. I need to get that car. I need to get that watch. I need to get that bag. I need to make eyelashes.
Right.
I need them red bottoms.
Right.
Well, I think the bottoms get dirty when you walk on them, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yeah. How much could you resell them for after that?
Right.
So, so, and we bought into these things, man. And look, don't forget, I think it was the editor of Cosmopolitan magazine who talked about the game that was being played on Black folk, about how they marketed to us actually to take advantage of us financially, and so that we could be consumers. Those things are real. So when you talk about mortgage, we're talking about what you guys are doing in terms of property, man. It is the number one quickest way to stabilize your financial self or your family, period. Why? Because what's this premium about that? You got a place to stay. If you got a place to stay, you don't have to worry about where to go. And homes still has tremendous meaning.
That's right. Absolutely. I mean, I look at when you just talking about, we have to know the difference, like what economic system that we're actually in right now in America referring to. You have communism, that's an economic system. You have socialism, economic system, and you have capitalism, which is an economic system. And we confuse some of those systems of where we at in America. So you look at socialism, that is, hey, we have, you have 3 cows and I have 3 cows, but together we got 6. Between you, me, and the government, we got 6. It's a we thing. We come up together, we start the race together, we finish the race together, we equal with everybody. And that's what socialism is. And that's what we think that we in this economy. Then you have communism. Communism is, hey, listen, you as a person, a resident, have 4 cows, but me as a government, I'm gonna come take your 4 cows, milk them for you, and sell you back the milk and tell you how much milk that you're gonna receive. And then we have capitalism. What capitalism is, hey, I have 3 cows and I'm milking, and based on the demand of milk, I'm gonna sell and increase and lower my price. But you know what? I'm gonna I'm gonna sell 2 of those cows, buy me a bull, let them make, and I have 10 more cows, and I can go in and create more revenue. And when we understand, see, listen, we are in a capitalistic society. You get paid based on the value that you bring to the marketplace, not personal value, but your skill set that you bring to the marketplace. What problems are you solving with your product and service? And so now that income is coming in, now it's sustainable income because you're solving a problem. Now you're able to go purchase their home. But my point of saying that is that most people think that we're in a socialism society and the government owes us something, that we are waiting for the government to come and rescue us, but we have to know, we have to be able to participate in our own rescue.
Well, I have another one. Black folk and most Americans right now, I think we operate, read Dr. Klein's book, The Shock Doctrine. I think she talks about the form of capitalism we live in, especially Black folk and around the world. I think we live under disaster capitalism right now. And disaster capitalism, to me, in my study, is that disaster capitalism means folk do real well off large groups of people doing real bad because of disaster, because of war, because of poverty. So I'll never forget, when I talk to intellectuals and others, one of my friends who deals with poverty says, so what do you see when you see this poor community over here? He says, well, I said, well, I see a lot of people doing real bad. He said, no, when I see a very large poor community, a city, he said, what I see is a few people who are doing very well because they're doing very bad. Disaster capitalism is our leaders and our captains in business and industry have figured out a way how to maximize their profits while we're losing more and more per capita shares of this country, and while we're losing more and more per capita wealth. That's the game we're in right now. So our inability to keep our cash, but our ability to, in our race to keep up with trends, has put a 1.7, $1.8 trillion economy, especially which is Black people, it's flipped us. We're upside down. And y'all know when you're upside down in something financial, all the way to those finances is on top of you. You can't lift it until you get, unless you get away from it, or until you find some way to give up what you had.
That's right. You know, and I love that term, disaster capitalism, because a lot of people don't realize that when you have those disasters, whether it's a pandemic, whether it's a war, like you mentioned, the interest rate tends to do what?
Go down. Hurricane Katrina.
That's right. So when we look back at what happened during COVID-19, interest rate was the lowest it have ever been in the history. Why? Because the powers that be, the Federal Reserve Bank, etc., say, wait a minute, the money is about to stop flowing. How can we get folks spending? Well, drop the interest rate. So now all of a sudden, interest rate went to an all-time low. And now that banker who go and buy tons and tons of automobiles at dirt cheap prices, they could go to that window at the Federal Reserve and get cash at 0% interest. Now they could come and say, listen, I can give you 2% interest on that vehicle. Now what happened? We running off going buy vehicles. So even with mortgages, even with anything of product or service, a product is based on those interest rates. And so what we at now? Well, when the COVID-19 shots came out, what they call the shot? The vaccines came out and shots was going on, people started to fear less. They started to feel some type of confidence. And as the confidence started to grow, the Federal Reserve Bank say, okay, well, people are spending willfully now. The confidence is here. Let's start to raise up those interest rates. And here we are right now, coming out of that historical low interest rate.
But that's why increasing home ownership, right? And the other part of this topic, financial IQ, is so important, right? Increasing our financial IQ, conversations like this, rebuilding our family so we can at least spend some time at the dinner table to have these conversations amongst the adults or with kids, even if they're overhearing your conversation and may not understand it. What did we find out, Randy and Veronica, a couple months ago? That the billionaire class that controls the finances in this country, they made 27% profit on their money while we were spending hours on online purchases and stuff that we didn't need.
That's right. That's right.
So the people who had the money made more money on their money than the people who should have been holding on to their money.
That's right.
To take advantage of housing markets and interest rates.
Exactly.
China, man, more online packages were coming to people from China, the Black families from China during the pandemic. It was like being addicted to drugs. People was addicted to online shopping, spending money that they didn't have.
Right. Exactly.
So when we got the American Rescue Act, when you got the money from the federal government, that money was spent already.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So then the next question has to be, and this is why MortgageWISE and what you guys are doing is so important. What happens in September when all this stuff stops?
Right.
When the rent protections are up and up.
Right.
Will you be in a position to be able to take advantage of some of the property that's on the market there?
Right. Right. Because it's going to end. It's going to end.
Anything that has a beginning, Randy, has a what?
It's an end.
That's right. Has an end. Right. And that's why it's just like you say, these topics it's extremely important to be able to talk about, because it at least gives people resources, give them something to think about and say, you know what? Let me go and look at what I'm actually spending every single month. Like, you have to know. I know it's hard. I know you don't want to look at it, because oftentimes we have more bills left over at the end of the month than we do cash. But until we know that number and start to make those adjustments and say, you know what? I need to get into a positive cash flow cycle. I have to lower my living expenses as much as I can. I need to dump that debt, get rid of that debt. And now I also need to increase some income legally, some way, somehow. So now I could be in that positive cash flow cycle. Now you're in a position to save some money. now you're in a position to get financed to purchase that home. And so now that type of conversation is happening. We just have to be willing to participate in our rescue. We have to be willing to make some sacrifices.
I'm extreme. Look, I'm concerned based on the social science and the economics. I'm concerned that this current most recent generation of workers and adults are 32% poorer than the two generations before them. I'm concerned that after 150 years, when we listen to Dr. Claude Anderson, we have less of the per capita wealth. When we do have a few people that are doing better, but not enough of them to make up for the difference or the disparity in terms of wealth or lack of wealth that we have. I'm concerned that Hispanics surpassed us for the first time in home ownership. But the light and the hope comes in what you guys are doing and seeing this as a mission. Look, I think that there are enough people out there that are becoming more and more conscious of natural living, of getting back to strong unions and healthy families, making sure that our legacy is not just in what we do, but what we leave for our children and the generations that come behind us, because conversations like this are starting to happen. It may not be taking hold right now, but I see the roots planting and embedding themselves in our community right now.
Right, absolutely. And just to change gears just a little bit, and we're going to start to wrap up. We was doing some research and we realized, like, man, when you type in Google, when you type in what's the #1 cause for stress, time and time and time again, you're going to see finances, money, lack of money, #1 cause of stress. And then when we look at it and say, well, when a patient is getting an organ transplant, one of the things the doctor does is give them stress hormones to shut off the immune system so the body can accept a new organ. So if that's the case, which is absolutely is, then that means when we are stressing about money, we're actually lowering our immune system and we're more acceptable to disease in the body. Right. From high blood pressure to gout to cholesterol issues to even COVID-19. So when we're doing the MIST, we had individuals that lost all their income, maybe lost portions of the income, but they were still affected some way, somehow. So now we have a low immune system, and all of a sudden COVID is right there. And so we having these conversations, and I call it financial wellness, right? It's the financial wellness. We have healthcare wellness, we have mental health wellness, but we need financial wellness, because if we could get that debt low, get the living expenses down, create some additional income, now the stress is eradicated. And now we put ourselves in a better position to have a higher immune system.
Look, Randy, first of all, you remind me of something we're not even talking about or thinking about. How does housing and the environment go together?
That's right.
Right. We've seen the environment. Look at Lake Charles right now.
That's right.
Look what happened during Katrina and post-Katrina. African-American communities need to be having that discussion about how does our environment, our natural environment, how does it affect us in terms of where we live and whether we have a place to live where we live. Right. So gentrification is less possible when there's more home ownership. Right. Period. When it's yours, it's harder to get you out of it.
That's right.
Especially when it's yours. So how do we begin to take a look at, especially here in Southern Louisiana? Man, we need to understand where we live and our environment in its relationship to where we live and what we live in.
Right. That's right.
So if you don't own that property, then if it's affected by the environment, the people who own that property, if their property's been damaged someplace else, guess what? You're not going to live in that property. They're going to move in that property. You're going to have to find a place to live. Right. So if we don't start having these environmental / home ownership discussions about the topography, right, and the demographics and the locations of where we live, look, Mother Nature doing what she wants.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
Yeah. So that's a whole nother piece.
That's right. Yes. So we appreciate that topic. Now we're going to move on to a couple of questions just for you personally, and then we'll be wrapping up. So the first question is, if you can go back in time and coach the younger Mr. OT, what financial advice would you share with him?
Understand saving and compound interest, no matter how much money you have, whether it's a penny, a quarter, a dollar, $5 a day or a week. Put it on the side and put it someplace and don't touch it. And then wake up one day several years later, man, for a nominal amount of savings, you realize you've got a whole lot of money. Invest in life insurance and invest in property. I would have told myself, all of my friends that I played ball with, who had these titles, man, who had finished college, man, we should have been venture capitalists a long time ago. We should have been pooling our money and owning stuff. You know, I'm saddened in a way thinking about this Randy and Veronica, because after Hurricane Katrina, I never forget my late brother who died, standing in front of our house, the property we owned in the lower Ninth Ward. And he asked me something. He said, I wonder what the neighborhood would have been like had we.
Wow.
Those of us who had means, who had education, who had access to resources, you know, I wonder what life would have been like here had we saw value in where we came from.
Wow.
Wow.
That's something I would have taken a look at difference. And in my political life, I would have focused on housing and economics. And I had a reputation for helping people and trying to do anything I could in the area that I could. I would have really focused on those two areas in terms of creating opportunities for generational wealth and creating an economic playing field where it doesn't say you may help Black folks, but where the legislation says you shall.
That's right. That's right.
Absolutely. So the second question, Mr. OT, is why did you decide to become an advocate for economic and business development and a servant leader?
Because I was broke and everybody around me, we looked like life was going, but we had less than our parents. And when I started looking at the statistics and information about those of us who had fabulous lives but didn't really own anything or had access to cash, you know, you talked about having 2 years of savings. Man, there are people who look so wonderful on the outside and you drive this and that, they don't have 2 days of savings or to be able to weather two weeks, you know. And the other thing that I would say is let's begin to realize it's not really about us. It is. If our life isn't dedicated to the next generation, how will our race continue? How will, and if the survival of a species is knowing that the next generation takes your place. Look at what's happening with our kids around the country right now with juvenile crime and broken families. Man, look, it doesn't mean you don't have trouble with your wife or your spouse or your significant other. It doesn't mean if you have a union where you create a life that you have to be together, but you got to be together on that life.
Right. Absolutely.
Somebody has convinced our people that living our best life is about us.
Yes.
I haven't seen a world yet where me doing me and living life like I want is what I've been able to do. When you say I'm doing me and I'm living for me, show me where that planet is, where it works out for the people who count on us.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It doesn't exist.
It doesn't.
And that's where the demise of our youth comes from. The broken households, the I'm doing me, I'm worrying about me, I ain't worrying about nobody else, and you're making decisions that's affecting your children. You know what I mean?
That's right.
It affects those children and those children those children and the people that your children meet in that driveway or that gas station or in front of that store. It affects that grandmother that needs somebody to walk her across the street, not knock her down and take her bag.
Right.
It affects every aspect of our life.
That's right. And the last question, sir, is how can someone connect with Mr. OT, learn more about what your services are, and how can somebody connect with you?
Man, I do messaging coaching and speaking coaching for people. I help consult people on issues. Also, you can listen to the Good Morning Show. WBOK 12:30 a.m. every morning from 7 to 10 a.m. streaming at WBOK1230.com. You can follow me on Instagram at Oliver/_Thomas_Jr. Or on Facebook at Oliver Thomas.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, listen, guys, we thank you for tuning in. This has been a great episode. I encourage you to share it. I encourage you to re-listen to it because Mr. Oliver pulled and shared a lot of good nuggets you can pull away. So having said that, guys, I'm Randy Chambliss. You can reach me on Facebook at Mr. Randy Chambliss and even Instagram. You can inbox me any questions. My direct number is 504-270-2783. Feel free to call me and text. And, we provide free consultation, right? We want to be able to know how can we serve you, right? And we're going to be able to give you some strategies and tips. And that's why we put this content together so you can learn, right?
And I'm Veronica Chambliss. I can be found on Facebook and Instagram under Veronica Chambliss. My direct contact number is 504-715-4388. I'm also online at VeeKnowsMortgages.com, and that's VeeKnowsMortgages.com. And also, Mr. OT, we would love to have you back.
Yes,
this
sir.
was an awesome conversation. I mean, I know you and Randy was like connecting because y'all already know each other.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I want to tell our audience and everybody else is going to listen to this, stop stunting and start house hunting.
Oh, I love it. I love it.
Well, it's whenever you're mortgage wise, it's difficult to be money stupid. Y'all have
Exactly. Well, you guys enjoy the rest of your day on purpose, and God bless. Take care.
Thank you. God bless you, man. Thank you.
God bless.
That brings today's show to a close.
Oh, come on!
Thank you for listening to the MortgageWISE radio show and video podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, feel free to share it with a friend and subscribe. Please follow us on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook at the MortgageWISE radio show. If you want to learn more about what we talked about today, give us a call at 504-270-2783. Or to view our podcast library, please visit our website, themortgagewiseradioshow.com.
Autobots, roll out!
Until next time, choose to have a great day on purchase, MortgageWISE friends.
Go
Go
home.
home. God bless everybody. Have a good day.